Hey Vince, can you hear me?
Good morning, Jay.
Good morning. Um, Welcome everyone to Cisco Canada's Virtual Kitchen. My commercial at the beginning, I think, broke up there. I don't know if it's the internet. Excited to have in from the NDP Group. Unbelievable to have you on the show, Vince. Welcome to Cisco's Virtual Kitchen.
Well, thanks for that intro. It's great to be here, Jay. Thanks for inviting me.
Vince?
Yeah, I'm here. You having a bit of trouble, Jay? Hello?
Vince, you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I can hear you.
This morning, sorry. Anyways, over to you, Vince. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jay. Thanks for having me. At least we don't have any cat filters going on this morning like that poor guy yesterday.
117 shows later, and we have a glitch with
exactly
like that. That's awesome. So, Vince, can you share today a little bit what we're going to be going over?
Sure, we'll do, Jay. Thanks. Thanks again for having me. So, I'm here to speak on behalf of the NPD Group to all your good listeners in the food service industry. And you know, I'm a lifelong foodie and been in the industry for 20 plus years. Got my start in Ottawa with a distributor, actually, as a sales rep, and then moved to Ottawa. Moved to Toronto a number of years later. Ended up landing at the NDP Group, the NPD Group. Excuse me, I got my name wrong. At the NPD Group about 14 years ago, and get to spend my time now just analyzing food service industry trends and reporting on those industry trends. You know, some of the largest companies in the world in the food space count on us for their decision making, for their menu planning. But today, I know I'm going to scale it all down, and we're going to talk to your listeners. Because I know really what your listeners are facing. Those challenges are a lot different for the smaller players in the industry. So ultimately, though, the consumer behavior trends that we track at the NPD Group and Crest, they're a rich resource for anybody in the industry. So I'm happy to be here to share them with your listeners today.
That is awesome, Vince. So my biggest question is, will the industry survive as we move forward? If there's so much talk about it, it's the hottest subject every minute in the industry right now. You hear, I actually hear kind of a mix nowadays. Some really good success stories, obviously survival stories, and unfortunately some restaurants disappearing. So will it survive, Vince?
I think this industry is going to be just fine, Jay, in the end. You know, what we've seen, of course, in the last 12 months or 10 months or so is years and years of attrition, all condensed into 1 year. So, you know, the market is really never going to be the same, but anybody who's been in the industry for a while knows that it was never expected to be. This industry is always in a constant state of flux and reinventing itself. And so we've all just had to really change in the last year and reinvent ourselves that much more quickly. But when it comes down to it, people just love visiting restaurants, and they visit for so much more than the food. We can get food anywhere, but it's about socializing. It's about the experience. It's about the ambiance. It's about an escape. And so as soon as we are able to, I'm absolutely confident that consumers will be coming back out to restaurants. Now, it's been a horrible year. We can't ignore that. For 2020, traffic or visits, as we call them, and dollar spending in restaurants is down by about 20% each. So that represents like billions of dollars and decades worth of growth that's just evaporated. So it's going to be a long, slow recovery, but I'm confident that this industry is going to come back bigger and stronger than ever.
So Vince, is there some ideas of what individual operators are doing right now to keep surviving? Can you share some?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You know, everybody's really had to pivot. You know, the big guys really have leaned on their group and their digital platforms. Those are some of the biggest thing that the big guys are doing. But there's nothing to say that the smaller players can't capitalize on that as well. So some of the biggest trends we're seeing this year were already taking place anyway. So again, there's that digital revolution, and takeout has been growing, especially delivery and dining at home. Dining at home has been huge. So this work from home phenomena that we're seeing now started years ago, and we've been tracking it for years as well. And then, of course, the other big trend going on right now is family dining. Everybody's at home with the family, trapped in their home, and they're having dinner in particular as a family. So these are areas of the business where consumption habits have really changed, and it's the opportunities that those operators can really zero in on.
Mhm.
Now, in
Is
the early days, we heard. Oh, go ahead, Jim.
no. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say, in the early days, of course, we heard everything about delivery, and I get asked about it all the time, and I speak about it and write about it all the time. And delivery certainly has been a godsend and a savior for many, many operators. But ultimately, it's still a bit of a niche in the industry. It represents less than 10% of all spending and visits. So really, what's been sustaining this business is the carryout, the takeout business.
So Vince, I have a question on that.
What's going on?
Vince, I have a question on that, on the takeout business.
Sure.
From a financial aspect, you're thinking financially on the money. Let's say your dine-in is closed, and there's a lot of these occasions happening across Canada where you're just having to rely on takeout. Is it profitable? Like, are you based on the volume on takeout right now versus your empty restaurant in size and your footprint of your restaurant? Is it profitable for restaurants to do that right now, or is it more of they're just breaking even?
It really does depend, and I will say I'm not an expert on the operations side of the business, but it is difficult for operators to make a go of it without their seat in their in restaurant dining. That's where they make their big money. That's where they get their bigger spend. People are more likely to come in larger groups, and they'll spend on alcohol. They'll stay around for an evening and spend and spend and spend. Whereas the takeout tends to be smaller, there's less beverage incidents, and again, because we're not having parties, we're just bringing it home to our families, so it's smaller groups. But it is that lifeblood, right? It's what's sustaining the industry right now. When I think about some of my favorite restaurants in my local neighborhood here in just off of downtown Toronto, and a lot of the operators, they had trouble in the beginning, and most of them just said, "I'm just going to shut down and ride this out," realizing just a few weeks later that this is not going to end anytime soon. And they all started slowly coming back in different ways. Some jumped onto the delivery platforms. Others were doing some of their own delivery. One of my favorite restaurants, they were shut down for about 3 months, but they still kept in touch with everybody on social media with email blasts and with Twitter campaigns. And then when they reopened for takeout only, they had never served takeout before, but they got their act together. They figured it out. And now they're doing takeout, and they were using this great new technology called the telephone to take their orders. So it wasn't rocket science. It wasn't. It was just something new for them, and that's what the industry's really had to do. They've had to pivot and do something different and change, and it's helping the industry to survive. Certainly.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm really seeing how many people have adapted to that. And have changed their business models just by catering to that more. So this is one of my favorite questions, Vince. Here's one of my favorite ones. How many, like, what are how can suppliers help, like myself, at Sysco here, and what we're doing? How can we help the industry right now? And this is great coming from you. And I didn't pay you to say this, but I'm hoping it's the stuff that I'm wanting to hear.
Okay. Let's hope so, or the show's going to end really early.
Yeah, exactly. It'll be another technical problem.
There you go. Exactly. Well, I think what suppliers like Sysco or the manufacturers, or, we are suppliers of data to the industry, right? What we can do is provide that insight, to provide those macro views, what else is going on out there, because it's so easy for a small operator to kind of get caught up in their own day-to-day and not realize that there's a whole big food service industry out there. And it's up to us to let them know what is going on and what will work for them, because there is no silver bullet. There's no one solution that's going to save everybody. As I already mentioned, for some it's been takeout, others it's been delivery. And then we see operators opening up grocery stores, and we see others going with virtual events, online events, anything to keep the customer engaged. Alcohol delivery, all these things. So when an operator is scrambling and trying to, like you said, reinvent themselves and figure out what will work for them, they need to turn to the people in the industry like myself, like you, and say, hey, what are you seeing out there? What's working? What can I try? Because I need some help. And so hopefully, we can bring them some of that help in platforms like this and articles that I write, and and just what I do in consulting with my clients, because I work with some of the big food manufacturers as well. And like yourselves, they are working with the smaller operators. And so this information filters down to them from us. And hopefully that all helps them out, whether it's just surviving right now and waiting for the patio season to come back and the restrictions to be lifted, or it's planning for the long term. Because the other thing too is right now we do have to plan for the long term, because I'm confident the industry is going to come back and spending is going to come back, customers are going to come back, but they're changed. The consumer is different. They're going to be expecting different things. There's going to be new regulations that everybody's going to have to deal with. And the big thing is some people are going to wait to come back, either for financial reasons or because there's just, maybe they've got health issues and they're going to say, I'm going to wait a year or two before I come back. I'm just going to keep ordering takeout and delivery. So everything we're doing right now, everything we're learning right now is short-term survival, but long-term strategy as well.
That's what I was thinking as well. Is we've kind of conditioned a lot of people in a sense. The more that we prolong, or the pandemic prolongs the ability to go into restaurants and sit down and dining, we're conditioning people to get that experience through their takeout. Do you see any trends with food in this area when it comes to the specific foods that you're seeing takeout that would be big? I have this question every day. Is it
Yep.
just burgers and fries and chicken fingers, or are we seeing other things come up? And also, what does the future look like when it comes to food trends in this whole new space that we are? Are people going to
Yep.
go dine out and have those, the salmons, the steaks, the ribs? Maybe not in takeout, but is that something that we're going to look forward to?
That's a great question. I will answer that question about menu trends, but to kind of bring it backwards to our comment about how these delivery and off-premise trends are changing and really becoming entrenched. I was speaking just with a client yesterday, and we were chatting, and he said, he checked off a number of the trend boxes. He's probably in his mid-40s. Like myself, he had never ordered on a takeout meal before on his phone until COVID hit. But now that he's doing it, it's like, hey, this is great. And not only is it great, the restaurants have figured it out. So they figured out how to deliver a good meal. And so even when restaurants open, I'm going to go out for those quality experiences, but I can now get quality food conveniently on my front door when I want it. So I'm going to keep ordering online, he said. And I'm the same. And many of our consumers are telling us the same as well. So, that trend is going to continue. And so when it comes to menu trends, that is something that we're all going to have to consider in the industry. How has that all changed? But you have burgers and fries? Yeah, go ahead.
Because I find it so interesting is, do you think, because this is a part that always baffles me, is that because of a couple apps that delivery, because we've had delivery forever.
Yes.
Why is it such a big thing now? I know through the pandemic it's obviously highlighted, but why are people almost like realizing that they can get food, like you said, at their front door, when 10 years ago, 20 years ago, you could as well? What's causing this shift? Is it the younger generations that we're seeing as consumers driving this?
Certainly the younger generations are part of it. And part of it, though, is that these third-party apps, they level the playing field. And they allow any operator, whether you're a little independent with one little 10-seat restaurant or maybe just a takeout restaurant, you can now get onto this global marketplace, this virtual food court. I like to talk. And to some extent, you have to be on there if you want to compete in that space, because that's where people go when they decide, oh, what do we want for dinner? And this was taking place before COVID. What are we having for dinner? The answer is, oh, let's look on our favorite food app, as opposed to let's go to our favorite restaurant website.
Yeah.
So those are the platforms that are really, really working. And it's, we're getting this adoption now because they were there. The industry had to pivot. The industry had to move to these off-premise and this digital ordering, because that's all that we had available. And so they were in the right place at the right time. As I said earlier, though, remember delivery is still less than 10% of all visits. It gets all the media because of the technology and all the talk about service fees and supporting local, but it's still somewhat of a niche. But it's a niche that everybody's taking part in now. It used to be all about
Oh,
the pizza, the Chinese food, and the chicken, but now you can get anything on delivery and anytime.
is that something that I hear a lot of people going, well, I don't, you made a comment there. A lot of people say, I don't want to go on the big, three apps out there or delivery companies because the money that they take from
Yeah.
us and they're trying to do it on their own. What do you believe is best? Because I believe, and I understand the complication of them taking a lot of the profit that you
Mhm.
generate. That's the unfortunate side. But you almost are out there fighting on your own, opposed to the ability that these apps bring you into the marketplace more. Younger generations are not, I don't believe, going to surf a lot of people's websites or social channels.
Yeah.
They're going to go directly to the one place they know of, and that's one of these larger app companies. What's
Yes.
your take on that? Is that something that you kind of gotta go in there, or you're out on your own and it's tough?
Yeah, it is tough. It is tough. So, a couple comments on that. First of all, you're right. It is definitely, again, driven by that younger demographic. Unlike of my age, I will pick up a telephone and call my favorite restaurant to place an order. Younger generations wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
The other thing is, get back to your earlier operational question. The operators, again, they've started to figure it out. In the beginning, they thought, well, we can pay these high service fees because delivery is only a small piece of my business, and it's a nice to have when my restaurant's in full tilt. Anyway, it's a few extra orders going out the back door. But now that it's all they've got in many cases, they've had to again adapt. So we see them changing their menu, figuring out how to make more profitable menu items, and just promoting those more profitable menu items for delivery, and how to pad those orders. A lot of dining out is all about indulgences. So how can they add that alcohol to the order and the extra add-ons, maybe some leftovers for the next day or a nice decadent dessert because everybody's trapped at home and they all want that little treat right now.
Yeah.
So there are ways for the operators to still make money on those apps. What
Mhm.
we're also seeing though is that industry is changing so quickly. I'm seeing a lot of these smaller apps come out, which are really to help out the little guys who can't afford those big fees. And that industry is being shaken up a little bit as well. There are options and opportunities out there for these operators. And the last point I'll make on that, Jay, is just that we are seeing in our data that delivery is not growing quite as fast as it was in the early days, but now carryout is picking up. So I
I'm hearing that too.
consumers are actually getting the message and responding to think, oh, okay, I can get in the car and I'll go pick up my order myself. I'll save them those service fees because that's what the media is telling me to do. So that message is getting out there.
Well, it's interesting because I think it's also that time that you get to escape your home for a little bit, for that drive to get some fresh air. But like you said, I think there's some connections there on local, supporting local. I'm gonna
Yes.
go support the guy. It's a 5 minute drive. I think it is keeping us within maybe our surrounding area that we buy our groceries in, or so get our haircuts. It's in these smaller areas that you're willing to support, and like you said, a lot of people are getting that message out.
Yes,
And that's what
exactly. And it's resonating, right?
yeah, and I think that's maybe in a way, and I always look at some of the silver lining parts of what COVID's given us, and that might be where I've heard COVID's given us the understanding, or more of a kick in the head a little bit more, if you want to say that, is about the importance of supporting local and supporting your communities. It's highlighted it more than anything right now, and I think people are doing that more for restaurants. Like you said, that takeout and grab and go, or curbside takeout is huge, and I'm starting to hear it more and more in a lot of conversations as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
So as we look at you know um, the younger generations right now, and building the restaurants, the big thing right now, the questions I get all the time is, what does the spring and summer look like when we start getting into vaccinations are going to start happening more. There might be some more restrictions right now. What do you see the restaurant industry right now having to pivot or change or continue the models that they're doing right now? Is there
Mhm.
anything that you'd recommend when it comes to marketing as we move forward for restaurants? In a sense, from what the data that you're seeing.
Well, from what I'm seeing, or the first thing I saw last year when the restrictions started getting lifted, and they were different all across the country, but we saw this big spike, this huge recovery after the big dip in March, April. So there was this pent up demand, and everybody was really eager to go back out again, even if it was on patios and in restricted with all the restaurant restrictions. So I expect that again, once the restrictions start to lift, and looks like this week there are a lot of announcements that many markets are opening up again over the next coming weeks. I think we're going to see a little bit of a shift again to those in-restaurant occasions. That's what we saw last year, and we'll see it again. And what I found really encouraging in the data is that even when the patio season ended in Canada and restrictions started again in October, consumers just went back to their online ordering habits and their delivery. I was afraid that when in-restaurant dining ended because of the season and the restrictions, that we'd see another dip in the data, but we didn't really. It went down to maybe a point or two. So
Okay.
people are still going out. They're still eager to get those takeout meals. And I think once the in-restaurant dining starts again and the patio seasons open up again, I think we're going to see another uptick in the trend.
So Vince, is there other segments, because you cover all food service, not just
Yes.
restaurants? Is there other segments in the market right now that are growing and actually enjoying some, I guess, positive sales in the year, like what we're dealing with right now, other than the doom and gloom that we hear a lot of? Is there some positive stories?
There are, and really the positive stories are about those operators or those operator segments that have been able to take advantage of those trends that I spoke about. So the delivery, the drive-through, the supper meals at home with the kids, and so the operators that have been able to take advantage of that are really, I wouldn't say winning. I don't like to say losers, but they're managing okay through this pandemic. And again, a lot of those trends are going to continue. So I know I've heard lots of announcements from the big quick service restaurants that there's going to be a lot of investment in for the next number of years. And we can expect to see a lot of activity in that space. As I mentioned, the delivery and the carryout, those are trends that are going to continue. So the operators that have been able to manage all that right now have been doing really well. What's interesting and what is really unfortunate for so many out there is the whole idea of hubs. Think of transit hubs, entertainment hubs, shopping malls, right? These have been largely shut down lately. So any operator or operator group that depends on those for their traffic, they are going to continue to struggle for the foreseeable future because we're all still going to be sheltering at home. And so many of our meals are what I call functional. We a meal because we're out doing something else and we need to eat, whether we're out at work, out at school, out shopping. And those functional visits are going to take a long time to come back. And so the operators and the operator sets that have depended on those functional visits are going to be, it's going to take a little longer for them to recover.
So Vince, what about catering?
Catering? In what sense, Jay?
Is it gonna survive? Or are we gonna still see catering? I've talked to a few caterers lately, and they're like, it's disappeared the business almost.
Yeah, well, catering has disappeared as a business because, of course, we can't have parties anymore.
Exactly.
But there's different ways to tackle catering, and whether you're a caterer or an individual restaurant. I remember speaking with a restaurateur 2 Christmases ago now, so Christmas of 18, and I noticed he seemed to be setting up in one of his party rooms for a large party. And I said, "Oh, you got a big Christmas party coming through?" He says, "No, that's our Christmas Day catering that we're getting ready for." He says, "It's our busiest day of the year. We serve 400 $200 meals out the front door on Christmas morning. It's his biggest day of the year." And so every other day of the year, he's a sit-down restaurant, but that one day of the year, he sells these, what is effectively a meal kit or a catering service, right? And so this is kind of the ingenuity that so many restaurateurs have glommed onto over this past year. that, hey, we can get into the catering business. What is food service delivery other than a catered meal for a small group? So why not upsize that any way you can? And, either for bigger groups or meal kits are one way that restaurateurs can get into that kind of catering. And, caterers can do this as well. And then the whole idea of online events. Again, I'm seeing this with restaurants, and caterers could do it as well, where we're seeing things like beer tastings, wine tastings, virtual cook-offs, or meal kit unboxings with the chef. Things like this. There's all these opportunities to bring these online experiences to your customers. And that's been helping restaurants, and this sort of thing can continue. And I was speaking about this long before COVID hit, and now it's just makes so much more sense. Now, for those caterers of yours who depend on those big parties, I can't say what's going to happen to that industry. That's going to be a tough one, Jay.
It will be, and I think they also change. They've been up and down through different market trends. 2008, I remember, a lot of them having a hard time through, the housing crisis of what happened then in our industry, and they were hit hard as well at that time too. It'll be very interesting how that all kind of irons itself out, and I'm sure it will come back in a different way of making it very profitable for operators. So I want to talk a little bit about the experience, because this comes up a lot. Is how important is experience right now as we move into the industry, opening up, takeout, all the areas that we live in right now? How important it is to really, I guess, create those experiences for our guests as we move forward.
It is very important, and it's all that much more difficult right now because we can't interact face to face, or it's very difficult to interact face to face with those guests, and that's what makes it difficult. But again, it was just about a year ago when I presented at the Restaurants Canada show, and I was talking about how to bring experiences to your customers, not knowing that with just a few weeks later it would become so prevalent. And so, experience is all about engaging with your customer and giving them a reason to come back other than just the food. When you're open for business, that means the ambiance, the atmosphere, the music, how you interact with your guests. But now it's engaging in that virtual world. So there's the events I spoke about earlier, how important that is. And like I mentioned, the social media. Just seeing a tweet from your favorite restaurant just reminds you that they're there and encourages you to go back and support them and visit and order food from them. So how you engage with your guests in those virtual platforms is critical these days, because that's the only engagement we have. Ultimately, once restaurants start to reopen, it's going to be that much harder for the operators, because the restaurant's only be maybe 25% full, and there's going to be plexiglass shields everywhere and people wearing face masks. It's going to be harder to engage and create that. It's going to be a different experience. Let's say that. It's going to be a different experience, but there is still that experience part of it. Going out for a restaurant meal is not just about the food. It's about experiencing something. And right now, one of the few experiences that we can still take part in is a restaurant meal, even if we're consuming it in the front seat of our car or taking it home to eat around the dining room table. It's still an experience.
So Vince, on that, how important is quality of food then when it comes to that's your generator of experience? How important it is?
Quality of food is really important. It always has been, Jay, and always will be. That's that differentiation between the functional and the emotional visits that I was speaking of earlier. Convenience is actually always number one, because when we're hungry and we're in a hurry, we're going to grab something. So that's where the delivery apps and the drive-thrus really come in handy. But as we get more to those functional visits and those sit-down visits, that's really where those the experience comes in, and where we really have to pivot as an industry to figure out how to continue to deliver those experiences.
So on that, what are some of the Canadian trends on menus that are going to see pop up or are right now?
Yeah, the menu trends. So, I've been tracking this for about 15 years now, and I can tell you the top food in food service is burgers and fries. And you know what, Jay? That's not going to change. It hasn't changed through the pandemic. It's not going to change into the future. So a good burger and fry platform will never do you wrong. And as we go down the list, we're going to see pizza, breakfast sandwiches, and chicken sandwiches. So those are great platforms for flavor and for new innovation. But so concentrating on those for any operators who have those on their menu are a great avenue for success. We've only seen them become more popular during the pandemic because a lot of those foods I just mentioned, they travel well. So that comes back to your quality question, right? Great that you can produce a quality meal in the back of the house, but if you've got to now put that in a box or a carton and ship that to your customer, what's that experience like on the other end? So it's important to deliver quality no matter where your customer is consuming it, whether in the restaurant or at home. So those are the big items that are always going to be on Canadian menus. And right now we're seeing all of the full service type menu items, the steak dinners, the fish dinners, and people aren't ordering those for delivery because so much of those meals are wrapped in that experience of sitting in a restaurant and having the server bring it to you in the beautiful plate presentation and the nice glass of wine or your favorite cocktail. And with that part missing, people just aren't ordering those meals anymore. So another trend we're seeing is that we're seeing full service restaurants kind of pivot their menu to those lower priced, easy to travel menu items. So
yeah,
on the menu, I have to mention though, Jay, on the menu, number one item in Canada is hot coffee. And we love our coffee in this country. And a lot of those visits, of course, are those morning commuting visits, which largely coffee remains the number one item. And we talk about getting back to our old habits. Yeah. And sometimes it's nice to just get in the car and drive somewhere. We noticed a little spike in coffee in September when the kids went back to school because we're finding, well, parents now had a reason to leave home and get back to the old normal, and they were stopping for their coffee on the way home. Kind of a little fake commute is the term I've heard put around that. So just like you said, an excuse to just get out, grab a coffee, and go home. And I got to put up my hand here. I'm guilty of that myself a few times.
What's funny is I cannot more agree with that stat, with that comment.
Yeah,
I did the same thing. Kids drop off, and it was like off to Starbucks I went.
You got it.
Awesome. It was an awesome experience too. Talk a little bit about this U.S. chicken. I've heard this through the news. This U.S. chicken sandwich war. Is it coming to Canada?
It's here, Jay. It's here. Don't know where you've been, but yeah, definitely it is here. It's not quite as crazy, but in this crazy market, we actually saw a spike in chicken sandwiches during the fall because all the big quick service restaurants have gotten on board, and some of this is spillover from the U.S. and some of this is homegrown. And so that's a great opportunity if you're thinking, what can the little guy do? How can I compete with the big guys who have all these big marketing dollars? And said, well, put an awesome chicken sandwich on your menu and promote it. There's a local restaurant in my neighborhood opened about 2 or 3 years ago, and they sell nothing but upscale sandwiches. And they won the best chicken sandwich contest a couple of years ago. So the little guys can do it. The little guys can compete. And the little guys can compete better on quality. They can compete better, I think, on that experience because they can have that one-on-one relationship that the big guys can't. And so it's a great opportunity for the little guys to, jump on the coattails of the big guys who are creating all the media buzz and take advantage of that. So right now, everybody's talking about chicken sandwiches. So if you don't have one on your menu, you need one now, and it's got to be good.
I love that. Who doesn't love a great chicken sandwich?
Exactly.
So let's talk a little bit about the trends you're seeing in the U.S. because we are influenced a lot by what happens in the U.S. And globally.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, thanks for that. And the NPD Group is a global company. We track our CREST food service consumption trends, about 13 countries around the world, and of course, the U.S. is one of them. And needless to say, every country went through this horrible downturn in 2020 that we're capturing. Canada's performance at about minus 20% is somewhere mid-pack. So Asia and Australia and the US were down about half of that, and European countries were on the other end of the scale. They were hit even harder. A lot of it has to do with restrictions and with infection rates, of course. So the countries that were hit harder with infection rates were generally hit a little harder in terms the trends. But I know a lot of people do turn to the US because, yes, we are influenced by them. And so what we're seeing in the US market, because their market is really a lot different than ours was beforehand, and therefore it's reacting differently. For example, I mentioned drive-through. Well, drive-through was always so much bigger in the US. And so for that reason, they're performing a little bit better. US isn't as coffee based as our market is. And therefore, we've been hit a little bit harder because coffee, again, it's all about that morning commute. And the morning day part in Canada is the largest in this market. It's not in the US. So, again, they weren't hit as hard with the decline in coffee. And then the US, of course, they've been able to keep, even when they have restrictions, their patios have been able to stay open because they're a lot warmer, and half of their market is got year-round patios. We don't have that here. So they've been performing a little bit better than us because of that. And we're just not seeing as many restrictions in the US market as well. So that's some of the trends going on there. But it still comes back to digital ordering, free drive-through, takeout, and dinner at home with the family. So those trends we're seeing pretty much in every market to some degree.
Yeah, I think that's that whole thing. We're all in this together, right? And we're
That's
all
a great
dealing
way of putting
with
it.
similar, yeah, and we're all dealing with similar, if not identical, issues in all parts of the world within our industry. It is hard, and I could see why the UK could be down because I think there's a big part of that dining experience of going out and eating these beautiful little pubs or cafes or
Sure.
the restaurateurs are got to be just dying because they would spend so much money in some of those restaurants in Europe,
Oh,
uh,
sure. Well,
right?
Italy was the hardest hit because, I grew up in an Italian home, and food is so much more than just eating. And the whole Italian restaurant scene is all about that. And they closed down 100% for a couple of months in the spring. So they were down. The only places serving food were the grocery stores.
That's incredible.
And they had no delivery infrastructure because and not just Italy, but many of the markets in Europe, it's like, deliver food? What's that about? No. Restaurant is about going and sitting and enjoying and experiencing. And when that part was gone, they thought, well, I guess I just won't order from a restaurant.
Yeah, it's I could definitely see that happening.
Yeah.
It's devastating. So Vince, I always ask all my guests the last words of advice. Right, this is where you get to share kind of what you feel that you want to just share with everyone right now. All the restaurateurs are going to be listening to this and watching this later. What's your last words?
Last words is you just said it a few minutes ago, Jay. We're not in this alone. We're all in this together. So if you're out there and you're struggling, make use of everybody who's out there, your suppliers, your industry partners like Restaurants Canada, your local BIA, government programs, whatever's out there. Grab all the news and from industry experts like myself and from Jay. There's lots of free information out there that you can take advantage of. And you know what? Talk to your neighboring restaurants. See what they're doing. Maybe there's something you can do together. I've heard stories about, two restaurants operating out of one kitchen to save costs, things like that. There's lots of opportunities out there. And then just keep trying things, whatever works for you, delivery, meal kits, events. You need to do something to survive in the near term, but also the status quo is not going to be a sustainable strategy in the future. So find what works for you and stick with it, and we'll all get through this together.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think the other thing I like what you said there around the suppliers, and I cannot stress enough to reach out to, obviously if you're with Cisco, reach out to us. We'll help you in so many different ways when it comes to your menus, to training, to bring amazing people like Vince to you, or the knowledge, the data. We've got so much, reach of resources for our customers. Uh, we want to be bogged down with requests.
Yes.
We are seeing them coming through, but we'd like to see a lot more. So please use them. The other thing too, I think, is the part that you brought up, the government programs. Sometimes those are complicated, but definitely look into them because I heard a lot of restaurants really leveraging that to keep afloat, and I think that's a big thing. And a lot of them aren't. I saw a stat the other day how many people aren't using the government programs that should use them. It's definitely a big support channel and can help big time.
Yeah.
Vince, I just can't thank you enough for being on our show today. Sorry for the glitch at the beginning. We'll christen the 117th show with that, but
Will do.
can't thank you enough for your knowledge, the support, Can people reach out to NDP and get the information from you guys?
NPD Group, yeah, you can find us at npd.com and read some of my articles there. And there's spots where you can click and get more information. Happy to hear.
Awesome. Please reach out, grab in more information. I think the other thing, like you said, learn as much as you can right now, because hopefully when we open up soon, or a lot of restaurants get the chance to have dining in, you're going to be busy. And we hope to see everyone get busy. You probably will have the time to read and understand what you need to be doing to keep moving forward. But Vince, thank you again. Amazing information as always. And I just wish you all the best.
Thanks, Jay. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. And if for everyone else, we're back tomorrow. 2021 Poutine Championship Challenge going down tomorrow on our show. You don't want to miss that, Vince. And
I'll be here.
you can't it's poutine, right? Come on, you can't miss out. So amazing challenge tomorrow with, I think, like the world's best poutiner. I don't know what you call them, but Ryan Smokeland from Smokes Poutinery is going to be on with Andrew Nicholson representing Cardinal Meats. They're going to be on our show tomorrow, so check it out. And Vince, all the best. And for everyone else, get out there, support our industry. We're all in this together, like Vince said. Thank you.